Hi, my name is Eva Lou Anderson. I'm a teacher at SADO. I teach government and economics. Um, I am going to talk to you about a story about uh, where I had to overcome my expectations, I guess would be a good way to say it. So recently, my career started teaching in the year 2000. I taught for about 8 years. And then I had a family. And when I started having children, I chose to take some time off from work. I resigned from my position in the district and didn't work for probably 7 or 8 years, at least paid work. Stayed at home with my babies as they were growing up. Once they started going back to school, once they started going to school, I started subbing at their school, and it allowed me to drop them off, spend the day teaching, which I really enjoyed and was glad to get back into. Even though I used to teach high school students, I was now with elementary school, but it really allowed me to teach, which is the interaction is my favorite. So I would do that. I did that for years, for 5, 6 years. And when I was doing that, I learned that maybe when I went back to the classroom, I'd want something different. And so I went back to school. My kids were in a dual immersion program, and I taught a lot in Spanish in elementary school, which I never thought I could do, but I could, and I loved the support I was getting and the practice I was getting, and understanding what my kids were going through at school and and the learning process of learning a second language for students. And so I was thoroughly impressed, and I went back to school. So I took a bunch of tests so that I could get another credential. I took classes online to get another credential, and so that I could certify to teach that. So I did that. Took a bit of time and a lot of growth because I'm not a test taker, and having to get back in and take a test to teach elementary school, which means like math and science and things I haven't done since I was in junior college. So I did that. I passed those. I did not pass one of the first tests I took, but then I went back and redid it, and everything went great. And then it was time to start applying for jobs. That's where I ran into my problem. As a 40 something year old um, woman who had taken time off, I found it very difficult to sometimes get past an interview, to sometimes get to an interview, despite my years and education of teaching. It was maybe a little better to hire somebody who was cheaper than a teacher who's had my experience and the amount of education that I've had. I found it difficult to find a job. So for about 3 or 4 years, 3 years, I would interview and not get a job and not get a call back, and interview and not get a call back. And that was really difficult because I felt like I barely interviewed for the first position I ever got as a teacher. They put me in a classroom, they said, go, we trust you, everything's great. And then to be older, and even more experienced, and for educators to say, no, I don't think you've either had enough experience in elementary school or you haven't had enough experience teaching this particular thing. It was shocking, and it really got to my core on my understanding of who I was and how I felt like who I should, where I should have been in my life at this point. I felt like it should have been as easy as it was when I was 20, and it wasn't. And so I ended up working in a long term position that I did interview for and I did get. But the other rejections were really, really hard to take and really hard to understand what I was doing wrong, or where if I was even going to be able to get a job again in education as a teacher. So, anyways, that takes me full circle to, even though I didn't get a position teaching in any dual immersion programs, which I really thought I wanted to do, the opportunity came up to come back and teach government and economics in another school, and even part time, which actually works out really well for me. So even though I wouldn't have said that this was my plan, it worked out perfect. I get to work with amazing students and amazing staff. I'm back with students, even though at a high school level, I understand, I think, even better what that means and how I can support you to understanding a little more of where you came from, or where people, where that elementary school education and help and fostering really um, is different and important. So, um, finding a position and a job again was felt like I wasn't unemployable, despite my age and my time that I took off, that it wasn't a bad choice. It's not easy, but it definitely was a difficult time for me um, to run into so many roadblocks at my age. I thought it would be easier as I got older, and it wasn't. And it was just as hard, but it was definitely easier to deal with because I had a lot of support, and my kids got to see that not everything always works out for you as much as you prepare, or even that you did everything right. And that's okay because maybe it wasn't part of the plan. And it's hard to put that in the universe of that might have not been the plan when it was my plan and I'm a planner. So, anyways, it was a growth experience. It was not easy to talk about or share because it kind of made me feel like a loser. But at the same time, I know that in the long run, it was just part of the journey, and everybody goes through it, and everyone has to go through it a couple of times in their lifetime, or all the time in their lifetime, and it's okay, and we can get through it. So that's what I learned at 40.